Representative Monks, how are you?
Doing great.
Great.
Thanks for having me here.
Hey, thank you for coming. You and I are getting connected specifically because I've talked to a lot of people about grocery bills, right? The grocery tax. Now, I've had Ron Nate and Lauren Nekachea on. Both talked about this, but both of them failed to tell me, or, we were talking fast. Perhaps they just forgot that there's a tax rebate associated for Idaho citizens. So what that means is I pay a certain portion of tax for every dollar I spend on groceries. And at the end of the year, I can actually apply based on the number of people within my household, not in an itemized manner, though some people are bringing up that issue, but I can apply based on the number of people in my household on a tax form, just check a box and I get a rebate back. That's very curious to me. I had, and again, I didn't understand that initially. Then I had Representative Levitt in here who was talking about repealing the grocery tax. I'm like, okay, that seems like, why are we taxing groceries? And then last stop, I had Lieutenant Governor Scott Betke in, and he said off air, he's like, listen, the grocery tax captures taxes from people who don't live in Idaho. And I was like, it's curious because the grocery store has to be in Idaho. He's like, yeah, but all of the hunters, all of the tourists, illegal immigrants, unauthorized workforce, all of those people that travel through Idaho, those people pay into this tax system and they are not eligible for a tax rebate. So we are trying to protect Idahoans by giving them this rebate while capturing out-of-state dollars in this mechanism. And I thought about that all weekend. I was like, God bless it. That's pretty smart. So you're running a bill to increase from, I believe, $125 per person to $155 per person?
120 to 155.
120 to 155. You're
Correct.
running a bill to increase that. And it's more if you're a little bit older. Okay. But just for me and my family, I would have, I would theoretically, if this passes, I'll have $155 per person in my household that I can apply to get rebated at the end of the year. Is that accurate?
Yes.
God bless
Yes.
America. Talk to me about this.
So, Matt, if it's okay, I'm going to back up a little bit here.
Take your time.
Anya, I am a guy who will cut any taxes out there, and people make it this dichotomy like, well, you either support the credit or you want to cut the grocery tax altogether. I'm like, well, actually, I'd love to get rid of it altogether, but I look at grocery tax as a consumption tax. We roughly pay 3 taxes in Idaho: income tax, property tax, and consumption tax, sales tax.
Sure.
Of those 3 taxes, I think property tax is the most egregious. It's the most unfair tax out there because you never own your home. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you are. You do not own your home. Go ahead and stop paying those property taxes and tell me how long you own that home. You won't.
Yeah, if I may, that was the point that was very well made in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Kiyosaki was like, listen, you never, it's called mortgage from the French word to death. And he's like, even if you pay off your mortgage, real estate is the royal's estate, right? That's where the words are derived from. He's like, it's not yours, it's the state's.
I made a number of years ago, I presented a bill that actually eliminated all property tax in Idaho, and you had to do that by increasing the sales tax up to about 12 cents, which is pretty high, I know. And so it was more of a thought exercise as far as what would it take to do that. And in that statement of purpose, I said, property tax is a vestige of the old medieval system. The old lords and ladies, if you want to keep your land, you pay your king, the money, or you're going to lose that land. And that's kind of how it is, right? That's what we continue to do. So of those 3 taxes, I think I hate property tax the most. The next tax I hate the most is income tax. Consumption tax, still don't like it, but to me, that's the fairest tax out there. I think for conservative Republicans for years have been talking about a national sales tax, get rid of the income tax. And that's the tax that we should all rally around if we're going to do one. So when you ask me, which tax do I want to cut? Well, I want to cut income tax. I want to cut property tax, and I will cut sales tax too, if I need to, if we've got the money and are able to do it. But that's the last tax I would cut if I was in charge. I have a voice, I have a vote. And so that's the way I look at it. Right now, we actually changed our credit for groceries that we're buying, this food credit. It used to be $100 2 years ago. Well, 2 tax years ago. 2 tax years ago, it was at $100. Yeah. And if you're over 65, it's $120. So we changed that. We ran it up to 120 and 140. So that's what we changed it to just literally 2 tax cycles ago. So this is really a 30% increase from that just a few years ago. All I'm trying to do is put $50 million back into people's hands. That's roughly what that credit would do. is to get more money back into the pockets of Idahoans. And I think people are trying to make this a difficult concept, like, oh, we should do something this. And I got $50 million that I can give because we have other tax priorities right now this year to the tune of about $400 million in cuts. That's what's on the table, about $450 million in cuts that we are trying to do. Income tax, property tax, and some sales tax. We're recognizing that inflationary costs, we all know it's more expensive to get groceries, right? Where every one of us has gone to the grocery store and you see how much that is. My wife sells her eggs from her chickens. And I'll tell you what, man, she could charge a fortune if she wanted to. And she's like, I just can't charge more than that. I don't think it's fair. I'm like, honey, it's like $5 in the grocery store, $7 for your,
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot. And so we're recognizing that groceries have gone up. They haven't gone up 30% as far as inflation on food in the last 2 years, but that's what this increase is. And I think it's a fair increase. And I think that's what we should do, because why would I want to forego, as you mentioned, all that tax money that's coming in from out of state? We talk about all the time, for example, the parks and recs. You want to reserve a spot up in the mountains here, man, it is difficult. It is tough because they're all booked up. Right. And half of them are coming out from out of state folks. It ticks me off when I want to find a spot, right? Because these guys from everywhere else. I've said, you know what? Raise the price on out of state as much as you want. I don't care. Leave the Idahoan cost down, and raise that, double it, triple it, whatever we can do to, if that's what we need to pay for those things. I would much rather have those guys pay for it than I would Idahoans.
Right. And there's precedence for that. You buy like fish and game tag.
Absolutely.
Right? Like it's going to cost more if you're out of state. I was speaking with somebody recently about the push to give at least like a priority time frame to Idahoans for registering for, state parks or state attractions, things like that. But obviously you can use a fee incentivization or disincentivization structure very easily as well. Just make it, like $500 more or whatever it is. Yeah. I don't know what the prices are, but like these are really simple things that, like, look, if it's a federal attraction and we're getting in federal dollars to support it, it's like, all right, well, then you can't kick out other federal, like you can't kick out necessarily Montana, but with dealing with other things, like, yeah, look, let's rally around Idaho. Like people are coming in, dum-dums like me, but then you have tourists that aren't even moving here. At least I went all in and I moved here. It's like, if I may ask, all right, here's a question for you. Why isn't this just like an automatic rebate? Like, why don't we have a structure where it's like, okay, you file your taxes and you don't even ask, or they don't even ask you to check a box. It's like, no. There are 4 people in a house. Here's this check.
It's close to that.
Okay.
It seriously is. And there is even a provision. So some of the elderly folks, and they're like, well, I don't file taxes. There's actually a special 1-page form, literally, that just says, yeah, I want the credit, and they can get it.
And if you're elderly, you can actually do it backwards. You can get reimbursed up to like, I think 24, 23, and 22. So like if anybody's just hearing this for the first time, you can get that money back.
Yeah. I mean, the important thing is we want to make sure these are people who are paying taxes in Idaho, right? If you're not paying taxes in Idaho, I really don't, I'm not concerned about giving you money back. Right?
No, of course. Forget those people. But like for the people that pay taxes, like I pay taxes here.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know about this. And like, look, poo-poo on me. I get it, right? But like, I don't have a great accountant, or, I'm using TurboTax incorrectly. Like, is there a logistical problem with having an automatic rebate?
I don't think so. As long as those people are paying taxes, we could probably modernize that something. I think that's definitely a good idea. We can work on that.
That's a great idea. This is great. You and I just solved the problem. I don't know if we did.
One thing we also did in this bill, and I want to make sure we understand this, because I'm catching, a lot of flack from people, and they're telling me now I got to collect all my receipts, and I got to do all this itemization if I want this money back. No, you don't.
That's a different bill, isn't it? Like that's a different. Oh,
it's in this bill.
Oh, you get to select either take it per person or you itemize.
That's exactly
there. You go. Okay.
So the credit we're raising it up to 155, and that's a lot of money. So a family of 4. If I do my math right, that's about $860 of groceries that family can buy every month without paying any taxes. That's what it equates to. This increase from 120 to 155, it's about $200 additional every month that you get to spend without paying taxes, right? And so that's the dollars. But some people will say, I spend more than that, and maybe you do. But if we get rid of this grocery tax credit and remove the tax on groceries alone, I will tell you it will be a tax increase to some people.
Okay. I feel like so many of the conversations I have with people like you that are elected officials explaining things, it's like, okay, thank God you're here, because you got to explain something to me. Why not articulate, instead of this is what the tax is, that, hey, this is how much money we get from non-Idaho residents? Like, let's rename the grocery tax the non-Idaho person tax as they're coming. Like, how much? Because that's ultimately the capture, right? Which is how many people file taxes, right? And then there's a portion of people that don't file taxes in Idaho, and that delta, the people that not filing, that's the money we get to keep. Do we know how much money like we collect versus how much we give back in the rebate? Like, what's the delta here?
I can give you some numbers.
I love numbers. 10. That's a great number.
No, I can give you some numbers.
Okay,
and
great.
everybody else who's going to talk on this issue is going to give you some estimates, and they're estimates. And I'll tell you why they're just estimates. When Idaho collects sales tax from all of our grocery stores, from all of our J.C. Penney's, you name it, wherever they're collecting the sales tax, they do not itemize what those taxes were for. So when Walmart submits their monthly taxes to the tax commission, it's going to be a total dollar. Here's the sales we did. We did $1 million in sales. Here's 6% of that. Here's your tax. That's what they submit. So they don't check, well, was it toilet paper, toothpaste, or tomatoes?
Sure.
And they also don't say, show me your driver's license. I want to know where you're from.
Right.
We don't collect that data. Now we have some estimates and we have some guesses. Utah kind of did an interesting experiment there for a very short period of time. They moved the tax on groceries completely, and then they realized that was probably a bad thing, and then they put it back on, but at a lower rate. So they did kind of see a delta there, and it was approximately 11% of the sales tax collected were on groceries. Now, again, how did you find groceries? And what do we think is fair to find groceries? And that's another complaint. Like, I'm now telling them what they can eat and what they can't eat.
Okay,
which is hilarious because that's not what we do in this legislation.
Right. Here's a question for you. Okay. How much did we collect in grocery tax last year? And how much did we give back in the rebate last year?
So you're asking me to tell you how much we collected. I don't know.
Oh, we actually don't know how much we took in on grocery tax?
No, because Walmart doesn't tell me whether or not it's toilet paper or tomatoes.
No. But what did Walmart tell you? What was the number that they told you?
They just give us a total number, and you don't have to look at every Walmart, every Smith's, every Fred Meyer's, add them all up, and then guess. We think we're somewhere in that $400 million range.
Okay, great. How much? Okay, estimate.
Guess.
What's 50 million between friends? Okay, here it is.
Could be off by 100
How
million.
much did we give back in the rebate?
If this about 200 million.
Okay,
Again,
great.
We're just ballparking this.
So let's make the assumption that every Idahoan in the state of Idaho that filed taxes, pays taxes, filed taxes, including elderly, they had the one particular, they all got back the money from the grocery tax that we have allotted so far. That's $200 million. But this grocery tax allows us to grab an additional $200 million from non-Idaho residents. That's the theory, right?
Well, I don't think it's quite the 200.
Okay.
I think we're probably short on that, and that's why we need to raise this credit, because some of that's coming from Idahoans who are spending more on their groceries than they're getting back, right? And so that's the whole purpose of this. If we think, which I think in some families they're paying more for groceries than they're getting back on the credit, so we're raising the credit. I mean, this isn't a difficult concept. That's it.
Right.
That's as simple as it is. And so we're going to raise that.
So let's say the credit should be pumping out 250 because you're raising it up theoretically by 50 million, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. So the credit should be 250, but the grocery tax still enables us to capture roughly 150 million from non-Idaho families. That's the idea.
That's an estimate. Some people will tell you, well, that's all coming from Idahoans because they're being overtaxed. I'm not going to argue that point. My point, what I will go out on the record and say is we are collecting millions and millions of dollars from out of states. Great. I don't know exactly how much that is. It's great. 50 million. Is it 100 million? I've heard of those estimates. I hate repeating them because I just don't have, I'm one of those guys. I'm one of those guys that I'm really particular on the numbers I use. So it is a lot of millions, 50 million, 100 million. Why would I forego that? Why would I take that out of Idaho's coffers? Because that means another 50 million or 100 million that I cannot cut income tax or property tax for. Because again, remember, what do I believe? I believe those are the worst taxes. So I would rather cut those taxes all day long. And if that means that I give up $50 million, even pick your number, whatever. You want to only say it's $50 million that we're picking up from out of state. That's $50 million now that I got to get from Idahoans. I don't want to do that.
Listen, I'm with you. I just think the way people talk about this is, I don't want to say disingenuous. It's just not the complete picture. It's like, listen, yeah, there's a grocery tax that allows us to capture lots and lots of millions of dollars from out-of-state people, and then we make it as easy, almost as easy as possible, to get that money back to Idahoans. Like, okay, and we can keep working on streamlining that process. We can keep working on, reaching elderly that don't file taxes. We can keep working on ironing it out so that we return as much money to Idahoans as possible. Yeah. But we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily, because then we're throwing out the 50, 100, 60, whatever the number is, millions and millions. It's more than 10 million. Yep. Like that's an easy thing to understand. And nobody says that. It's like, that's a great explanation of why this is a relevant and at least useful tax mechanism in the state of Idaho.
You know what it also does by tying it to filing your taxes, it forces people to file taxes. And that's a good thing, right? We want people to pay taxes if they owe taxes. And this just, if you want the credit, then you got to file a tax return. It's just that simple. And if you're not required to file a tax return, it's a very simple one-page. I mean, I just looked at it. It is as simple as you can get. You give me your name and your address, and check the box.
Yeah, right.
And it's just that simple. Now, you challenged me at the beginning, and you came up with a great idea.
Automating.
Okay, automating. I'm all in. Well, that's something that we'll put on our to-do list.
Can we do this next year?
Maybe we'll see if we can make it this year. I don't know.
Dude, if you do it this year, can I present it to the floor? That was my idea. Come on.
You could come in committee.
Come in committee,
but you would not have the privilege of coming on the floor.
Testify.
You got to
testify.
You see this?
Yeah.
You got to get one of those to do something on the floor.
I'm not getting that. Nobody would ever vote. I'm a terrible person. Like nobody's ever voted for me.
Have you met the legislators in the House?
I've met a couple. Okay, listen to me. Listen to me.
You got a really good chance. Trust me on this.
In the spirit of thought experiment. Okay, I'm very curious about what you said with like theoretically, if we could eliminate the property tax and just replace it with a consumption tax. Like, okay, and I've heard people talk about this, but that seems to be okay. So first off, my property tax is made up of like school levies and mosquito abatement and, like fire and, all these things like the Eagle Fire District. I have all the things that everybody else has, sheriff and whatnot. Okay. So that all goes away. All right. So then we have to fund those things because I don't we can eliminate the property tax, but I don't want to eliminate having fire service. Let's not do that. So then we have to come back around and say, all right, this consumption tax is going to fund all of these individual things, right? That takes away local control from what I want to fund. So for instance, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I had Chief Tominski from the Star Fire District in, as well as Chief Stoll, who's the chief paramedic guy down in Canyon County. Both of those guys came on because they were running, it was an override levy and another, I think just a normal levy or something. Both of them were going to the community saying, hey, we, in the case of Chief Tominski, said, look, we have, through mitigation fees and some other fees, we have enough money to build another fire station. Great. No money to put the people in it. And he's like, we need roughly 9 firefighters. And this is a terminal, there's a threshold number. Instead of law enforcement, where it's like, can we add one person? Yeah. Like we increase, can we add another person? Fine. Fire, you can't just add one person. It's like one person's not running the shop. So it's this real threshold thing where it's like, we need at least this many people. Okay. The people of the Star Fire District disagreed with what he wanted. And they said, you know what? We either don't care about the increased wait time, or we think you might be able to, increase efficiency. Chief Tominski disagrees. None of my affair. I'm not in the Star Fire District. But my point is, taking away that property tax mechanism and that debate in these districts removes local control from what I can agree to be taxed on.
Not necessarily.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
All right. So
I have a good point, don't I? I have a good point.
No, you're absolutely correct.
All right.
No, you're absolutely correct in that we do not want to take away the control of the locals there. 2 points I'd love to make. First of all, you nailed it on the head. Property tax is all about locals. The state collects $0 of property tax. We spend $0 on property tax. The state has nothing to do with property tax. That is all on the locals. If you break down the average Idahoan, they spend about 30% of their property taxes goes to the city. approximately 30 goes to the counties, and about 10% goes to all the other special taxing districts.
Okay.
So that's how your property tax is currently funded. Your cities and your counties and your special taxing districts also receive a portion of all the sales taxes currently collected by the state. I think it's 11.7%. Don't quote me on that. I might be off on that, but I think it's 11.7% of all the sales tax we collect, and it's divided out and goes to all of these organizations. About it's a rough number, but about 45% roughly goes to the cities, about 45 goes to the counties, and the rest goes to all these special taxing districts, and they get to spend it how they want. So they have that control of how that money is spent already. Right. So we provided a mechanism for them to be able to spend that. Property taxes is used also to supplement those kind of needs. So if we did supplement those property taxes and completely got rid of them, they would still have that control.
When you say they, who's they?
The locals, whether it's the city council, whether it's your county commissioners, or it's your board.
We would still vote if we agree for the levy or not. It just wouldn't be coming out of our property tax.
Yeah, they wouldn't necessarily need it.
Okay, so then all the sales, like the enhanced consumption tax, would all stay in this pool locally, either within the city or the county, and then it would be pooled together. And then effectively, if people voted for it, they're like, okay, if you vote for this, we're going to have to increase the consumption tax on everyone. Like if there's not enough money going around, or you gotta levy an override levy or something like that, just like we have with property tax, which is like you got to vote to increase the tax.
So yeah, I mean, you could do it. They call them local option taxes.
Sure.
Oftentimes is a great way. A lot of communities do that. A lot of states do that. I'm not a real big fan of those, but because there's only one way that they go, and it's up. They never go down. But so I mean, you have a trade-off though, right? Depending on how we want to do that. Some people want to get rid of these property taxes completely. You get rid of property taxes completely, Idaho would be one of the only states. In fact, it would be the only state that didn't have property tax. Where do you think all the Californians would invest their money? If they want to invest in property, they'd invest it in Idaho, because there's no property tax. So they're not having to pay something every year to maintain this investment, which theoretically could make property in Idaho very, very expensive, much more than it's already been over the last 9 years. So that's a downside that we should be thinking about. Do we really want to do that? So there's a lot of nuances.
There are a lot of ways to skin a cat, man.
I know it is.
Yeah, my friend lives in Texas. When we were moving out of my former state of California, we were considering Texas. We were considering Idaho. Frankly, that was really just it. And we only considered Texas for like 30 seconds, primarily because it's like, okay, first off, it's far away. It seems hot as hell. Like, I don't know about, and like, I love Idaho heat, by the way. Like, I'm Mexican. I love like 105, no problem. It's a dry heat too. It is fantastic. Anyway, my point is,
and it only peaks, right? So we still cool off in the mornings and the evenings, to where, having spent a lot of years in Vegas, it doesn't cool off. It's
but you know what the problem is? The problem that I find, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it cools off. I love it here. I don't care. Like, it could be 1,000,000 degrees. I'm not going back. Like, it's a great spot. But Texas has an interesting system, because I think they have, it's them that they don't have a state income tax, but they get you through property tax. Like, you're going to pay the tax however you can. And there are a lot of arguments for like, okay, should the homeowners be paying it or landowners be paying it instead of like people that don't own properties? Like, there are a lot of different nuances, but it's like, we're never getting a tax reduction, right? Like, we're still going to have to pay for fire. We're still going to have to pay for law enforcement. Like, we're mosquito abatement, unless you like, West Nile virus, we're going to have to pay for these things somehow. And it's going to come out of money somewhere to support the community. And look, honestly, I don't really care that much, as long as we have like local control over it, and, people are allowed to make the calls. And again, like, I'm not in the Star Fire District. If I were, I probably would have voted for it, because I like low response times. But the people in the Star Fire District get to decide about what they want. It's like, great. That's great. Like, that's wonderful. I think they should be able to do that. I think it's difficult sometimes for first responders, because they're like, well, gee, if we had more help, like, we could get there faster and we'd save more lives and whatever. That's none of my affair. Like, I'm not, as long as we get to make the decision, that's what I really like.
And the ultimate decision is at the ballot box.
Right.
That's where we're voting in the people. That's the same thing you do with us in the legislature. If I'm not doing my job, you don't like the job I'm doing, then get rid of me. Right. That's the ultimate decision that people have. Your locals is no different. And unfortunately, the number of people who go out and vote in these local elections is minuscule compared to what they're doing for other elections. And that's unfortunate. That's where you make your voice heard. How many people, ask them, have been to a city council budget hearing? Not very many.
Not many.
And those where these decisions are made, and you have those opportunities to voice your concerns and let people know. It's the same thing about the Capitol here. When we have bill hearings, you want to have your voice heard, well, come tell us. One beauty about Idaho, the legislative body is so available to the public. I give out my cell number to anybody who asks, for crying out loud. You want to call me?
It's a burner.
No, it's not. It is the only cell number I have got. And
I have my cells from when I was 20. It's still 510. I'm holding on to 510 like it's like I might as well get it tattooed. Like
nice, but we're still small enough that we're able to do that. We're getting bigger, and it's getting harder. Trust me. I mean, it is getting harder. Some of these smaller communities, I think everybody knows who everybody is.
Right.
Ada County's not like that anymore.
No.
It's unfortunate that we're getting just a little bit bigger, and so we're not as available. But we've got the opportunities to help, and Chief Tominski, right? He's been very active down at the Capitol and trying to make it to where these firemen can afford what they need. And one of the things that he finally discovered, which we've been fighting for a lot of time, is these urban renewal districts. In urban renewal districts, they draw a circle around some property, and it used to be designed exactly for what the name said: urban, meaning city area, renewal. And it's basically these rundown, dilapidated places. And how do we get people to fix things in there? If it's a rundown, it's hard to invest in these areas. And so what it did is it drew a circle around it and said any of the property tax increases because we're going to invest in this area, right? The property values are going to increase. And so this extra money then will be available to the city. But so instead of waiting until after the fact, we're going to take the money and we're going to invest in it first. We're going to build up the infrastructure. We're going to, replace sidewalks. We're going to make this a nice place. Businesses will come back there and it will grow and develop. And that increased in revenue from the property tax value will pay for that. And it's good. Everybody around it, and it benefits. Unfortunately, we use that in Idaho as a tool for green fields, meaning a cornfield. And we draw a circle around it. We say, this is going to be a new urban renewal district. And this urban renewal district, now all that increased value in property is going to this urban renewal district. Some of the communities do a fantastic, good job with it. And Chief Tominski will found out that in Middleton, about $300,000 a year is siphoned off should be going to the fire district, but it goes to this urban renewal district. And it's for greenfield projects. And usually it's used to attract a new business. They did one down in Meridian off 10 Mile, and we got all that development off 10 Mile there in the freeway. That was an urban renewal district. There was no urban, there was not renewal, but it was used as an incentive to attract a new business. Like, hey, we'll put in your infrastructure if you guys build here. So, right, it was a benefit to that builder. And the builder's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I'll come in and I'll build there now.
Right.
So we gave this benefit to the builder, and we can argue whether or not that's good or not. But what it does is it takes that property tax increase that normally would come into that area and it siphons it off elsewhere. And it shifts that burden to everybody else. And the fire departments have finally figured out that, wait a minute, these urban renewal districts are taking money out of our pockets that we would normally get from the growth, right? Remember, growth's supposed to pay for itself?
Growth pays for growth.
Not when you stick an urban renewal district around it steals it all, and there is no growth for them. So we've got legislation this year that's going to come out here pretty quick to try to help them fix that, let these fire districts opt out of that if they need to.
I did not know that there was legislation. And frankly, like, I've heard the Greenfield thing before. I've never really understood it. I usually just smile and on. But explain, like, I would love to learn more about that bill. Who's running it?
So I am. Actually,
look at you.
I'm not getting rid of all urban renewal district stuff.
No.
We're just for EMS related services. These are critical things. They need to be able to grow and expand, right? Tominski up there in Star, Middleton area, they're trying to combine those fire districts for some efficiencies, which I think is a good idea. Save the taxpayers some time and effort and get better response times. And it's hard for them. And so we've been working with them, trying to figure out ways to work within the system we have to be able to get them more money so that they can actually grow and expand with the communities. And this is one of those ways to do it.
That's beautiful.
So no, we're working with them on that. That I think it's going to make a difference for them. It's going to help them. Doesn't solve all the problems. Nobody's that naive to think that, boy, this is the silver bullet and we can walk away. But it's just another one of those things that we can do in the legislature to help. We want to make it easier for them. They won't have to go out, get new bonds, new levies, try to again convince everybody to vote for things. It's a difficult process. They don't like doing it. Schools don't like doing it. Nobody likes doing it.
And the burden of communication is just so great.
Oh,
I mean, it's like, especially when you look at Star has gone from, 11,000 people to almost 22,000 people in roughly 4 years, right? So if you have, like you might be on a trajectory as a fire district trying to improve things and, expand and all these things, and people moving in have no idea what you've been doing. They don't know who you are. They just know, like, wait, I just moved here and they're already talking about increasing my property tax. That doesn't sound great. I'm not saying that's what every Star resident says, but the difficulty of communicating what has been done, what's currently being done, and what needs to be done to people when they're just getting here and orienting themselves, that's a really difficult thing to communicate. And especially when so many people, function in a geographically removed manner. It's like, you're not getting them to come down to the city hall to talk about these things. Like, that's the most difficult thing to get people's attention. That's awesome, man. Is there anything else? I know it's the end of the day. I grab you for this. Now we're talking about a lot of different things.
No, that's all right. I am going to go back to the take home message here. We are trying to cut taxes. We've got a package this year that we're looking at about $450 million in tax cuts. The bulk of that income tax cuts, about $260 million in income tax cuts. We're looking at another $100+ million in property tax relief. $50 million on the sales side that we're increasing that credit for. We've got a tax credit that we're looking at for school choice, which is another $50 million. All of these things we're trying to do to give back to Idahoans. I don't want people to get tooled up on this whole thing about groceries why are we only doing this much? We're only doing $50 million. What about doing more? Why don't we take it all off? I just want to give you $50 million back. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to make this difficult. We have the credit system in place. I'm not trying to upend anything. I'm just trying to increase that credit. It's that simple. Anybody who's trying to make it more difficult is probably trying to sell you something that's not accurate.
I'm trying to make it even easier. Let's make it automatic. We've solved the problem today. We solved the problem today right here. Okay. You heard it here first.
I'm going to figure out how to do that, and I'll report back to you. And if you have me back on, I'll be happy to report back what we found out, see if we can get it this year.
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
God bless it. Thank you for coming on, sir. I appreciate you. Thanks for what you do for Idaho.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks. My pleasure.